Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. I'll just allow the live stream to just fire up and just straighten up the mic. Bismillah. Right. Inna alhamdulillahi wa kafah. والصلاة والسلام على رسوله المصطفى وعلى عباده الذين ارتضى ومن بهداهم اهتدى وبآثار أهل المدينة اقتفى وبعد فسلام الله على القوم مرحبا بكم أهلا وسهلا يا جماعة. Wow, great to see the regular, mashallah, beautiful faces here. Allah bless you all. Yeah. Well, we're back with this episode of MindTrap. And what I want to do today is take you on a journey to the dimension and the realization of this legendary personality, Shaykh Muhyiddin Ibn Araby. Somebody we've spoken abundantly about on my channel of late. I've had a whole Islamic psychology series framing some of the terminology of Shaykh Muhyiddin Ibn Araby in light of modern day psychoanalysis and psychology. Right, tonight's guest, somebody who can really help, inshallah, shed some light on this legend of a personality who I feel is so relevant for our day and age. And equally, I feel he's so misunderstood. And that is Shaykh Muhyiddin Ibn Araby. Now, tonight's guest, Shaykh Dr. Sayyid Hammad Ali from Canada, Alberta, somebody we've had on MindTrap previously on 2 episodes discussing spirituality, mysticism, Shaykh Ibn Araby, amongst other topics as well. So, Ya Jama'ah, I present to you Shaykh Dr. Sayyid Hammad Ali. Ahlan wa sahlan bikum marhaban wa shukran.
Assalamu alaikum, Mufti Abu Layth, and assalamu alaikum to everyone who is listening. Thank you for having me on this show. It's, we've been having a lot of interesting discussions before, and it's been great. And hopefully in this session, we can discuss a bit more about Ibn Araby. And also, like you have clearly indicated in a very concise way, that his relevance, especially for contemporary Muslims, and also at the same time the misconceptions regarding him that we can perhaps speak about, inshallah, in today's discussion. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, and Shaykh, before just jumping into this, really what I think is such a necessary topic, a bit of your journey, just very briefly. Now, you're somebody we've spoken previously about your PhD and that pathway, but not spoken much of your journey through the Islamic sciences. Shed some light on
Sure.
that for us briefly, just for the viewers.
Sure.
Your journey, and then we'll connect that to this spiritual path, inshallah.
So Mufti Saab, in terms of my training in Islamic tradition, after doing my high school from Canada, I went with my family back to Pakistan in Karachi, and actually I got admitted to a medical college. I was pursuing medical college in Karachi, Bakai Medical College. I was in my second year, but I always wanted to study Islamic, sciences. So I dropped out of medical college and I went into a madrasa. When I was studying, and in madrasa I actually spent 4 years, when I later realized that perhaps another way I can obtain more knowledge is studying one-on-one, as in the past people would do. So in this way, I was fortunate to study Arabic, fiqh, Hanafi fiqh specifically, and hadith sciences with different shuyukh. So for example, when it came to hadith sciences, I was fortunate to get a Ijaza Amma from Dr. Abdul Shahid Nomani, who is the son of the well-known muhaddis from Karachi who passed away in 1999, and his name was Sheikh Abdul Rashid Nomani. He wrote the book
Yes,
Ibn
of
Majah
course.
Kitabahu Sunan, and in order it was translated as yeah, Ibn Majah Ilm al Hadith. He's the elder brother of another great scholar, Dr. Abdul Halim Chishti, who passed away. So I studied with him hadith. I was able to study fiqh. With even for some time, I spent time with Mufti Zarwali Khan as well. I think for
Oh, did you with Mufti Zarwali?
yes. So
Quite a
Nurul
a
Ida,
personality.
and he just like couple of during COVID he had passed away. May Allah have mercy on him.
May Allah bless
So
his
I mean,
afterlife.
so I studied Nurul Ida with him, for example, that the first yearbook.
Mhm.
I was fortunate to get that, but then I realized that at the same time I wanted to pursue other knowledge, fields of knowledge. So then, alhamdulillah, God gave me the opportunity to do an MBA and MPhil from Pakistan. So this type of knowledge that I'm talking about, the madrasa knowledge, specifically in the Sunni world, is very much ilmul naqli. It's the transmitted knowledge. And the transmitted knowledge is something which is important for the perspective of outward aspects of Islam, the exoteric aspects of Islam. But then I also wanted to study, in terms of the intellectual tradition. So when I returned back to Canada, I was fortunate to pursue my studies in social sciences, but also study this intellectual tradition. And I was fortunate to study with Dr. Atif Khalil, who is a student of Dr. William Shiddick. So in this way, then I got introduced to Ibn Araby, Sahwar, the Mullah Sadra, and this whole knowledge, which is also important component. And the reason I
Yeah.
say that is Islam is focused both on the Zahiri and the Batini aspect of an individual. After all, God is a Zahir wal Batin. And if we believe that, the believer, that is, the believer in this sense, we have the hadith, the believer is the mirror of the believer. We know one of the divine names of Allah that is mentioned in the Quran is Al Mu'min. So God is both
Yeah.
Zahir wa Batin. So the Islamic law or the Islamic understanding is for both the outward
It's
aspects of the
so
human
yeah.
being, and that comes from the transmitted knowledge like fiqh. But then you also have the intellectual tradition, which is aimed for an inward journey. So by the grace of God, I was able to acquire both sets or different types of knowledge, the transmitted and the intellectual tradition.
And you studied with the student of Dr. Chitik. It's Dr.
Yes,
Arif, did you say?
Dr. Atif Khalil,
Dr. Atif. Okay.
who is a professor at University of Lethbridge. In my doctoral course, actually took a course of Islamic philosophy with him, and over the last 7 years, I have extensively, have this a very close friendship with him, and he has been a beacon in my life in the sense he has taught me what this other aspect of reality is, which unfortunately is something that perhaps we need more in the Muslim community.
Well, shukran for that. Well, I mean, Dr. Chitik was unquestionably one of the most leading authorities on Sheikh Ibn Arabi,
He is.
especially of the last century. Yeah, I
Yes.
mean, unquestionably, and
Yeah.
especially within the English language.
Yes.
I mean, yeah, so for the English speaking world, you have, and his legendary book really is an introduction to anybody wanting to reconnect with connect, sorry, not reconnect, but connect with the mystic or the spiritual
Yes.
tradition of Sheikh Ibn Arabi.
He is probably the best translator in terms of his approach is to take the text, translate as it is, and just give a summary of that. So his book, Sufi Path of Knowledge, is an amazing work. And once, because we need to recognize that when we look at the Quran, for example, if the word of the Quran, if it is the word of Allah, right? So it has how Ibn Arabi sees that the letter itself has the meaning. The letter is the truth. It is the bearer of the truth. It is the meaning. So that is why it is so important to have this type of both understanding of the exoteric dimension of Islam, but also the esoteric dimension of Islam.
Yeah. Somebody asked a question here that, look, which Ibn Arabi? So, just to clarify, there are two legends of Islam, both by the name of Ibn Arabi, who emerge from Muslim Spain. The one we're speaking about. So, you've got Qadi Abu Bakr Ibn Arabi, who is the Maliki Don of fiqh and hadith, who has the famous legendary commentary on At-Tirmidhi amongst his tafsir of the Quran, very famous, usually pronounced with the alif lam in Ibn al-Arabi, so al-Arabi, Abu Bakr Ibn al-Arabi. Now, the other, a generation after him, or two after him, because he is a student of the student of Ibn Arabi. So his name also Ibn Arabi, pronounced without the alif lam, often referred to as Muhyiddin Ibn Arabi. Okay, his name is Muhammad. Both of them, their name is Muhammad actually. So Muhammad ibn Arabi is the other. He's Muhammad ibn Arabi as well. Um, so yeah, both are from Spain. Although Qadi Abu Bakr is from Seville, and Muhyiddin ibn Arabi is from Murcia. And then they both actually traveled eastwards as well. So they both have a huge overlap, except in their traditions. They are, they what comes legends of different domains. But yeah, we are speaking about the great, the spiritual mystic and Sufi of Islam, Sheikh Muhyiddin ibn Arabi.
And
So,
he
yeah.
was also known, and the one we're talking about is known also as Sheikh Al Akbar.
Sheikh Al Akbar. Yeah, that is a good point to mention, that he is often referred to as a Sheikh Al Akbar, the greatest Sheikh.
Yes.
And people, the whole tradition often associated with him is referred to, especially in the academic circles, as the Akbarian kind of tradition. So, just in case you come across that term, I'm not saying you need to use it, but in case you come across it, not to associate it with, King Akbar, for example, because I have seen actually people sometimes confuse that, like the Akbarian, and they've thought, oh, this is referring to, Jalaluddin Akbar from Mughal India. No, it's referring to Sheikh Al Akbar. And here I'd just like to, put a caveat, and then maybe we can come back to this point about him being, controversial or misunderstood. In Islam, look, it is true that when we say Sheikhul Akbar, it is to people who appreciate the path and that he has kind of trailblazed for them, that we feel, whoa, what a legend. Otherwise, sure, it is true that in Islam, there is no one person that is the entire sheikh of the whole of Islam. We don't. There, I know this is an interesting discussion because it's often, you could juxtapose diametrically two personalities, both of whom are given such accolades. On the other side, Ibn Taymiyyah referred to as Sheikhul Islam. Now, in all honesty, there is, you couldn't say anybody is Sheikhul Islam in that sense, because no one person comprehends the entire, to be, what I mean by comprehend, as in to be a legend in every aspect of Islam. But what we mean is, to a certain people, he may be that. So let's say Ibn Taymiyyah is unquestionably, one of the most leading scholars of the Hanbali madhab and of the Hanbali Aqidah. So to the Hanabila, it's very, let's say, deserving that they give him this title, Shaykh al-Islam, because to them he is Shaykh al-Islam, because Islam of the madhab of, the Hanabila. Now, to other people as well that maybe may not be Hanbali in fiqh, but might be Hanbali in Aqidah, so they have this great reverence for Ibn Taymiyyah. So on this, and juxtaposed to that, you've got Sheikh Muhyiddin ibn Arabi, both of whom are highly controversial figures, both of whom some people have kind of given such, praised to and considered of the highest degree, and that simultaneously both have been considered, wal-'iyadhu billah, kafir by people. You've had takfir done of Ibn Taymiyyah, and you've had takfir done of Ibn Araby. Um, but, this is not about hate, and it should never be about that, because really, if anything, if we can learn anything from our deen, it is that this is a way of life of love and light, that Allahu nuru samawati wal ard, and that the sign of the believers, that one of their signs is that ashaddu hubban. And in fact, that's something Ibn Araby highlights, that those who have faith are the most intense in their love. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there as a jumla mu'tarida, just to kind of highlight that, look, you do get a lot of, you'll get titles and epithets, and and this is for people who revere the path and the teachings of this person.
If I may add to that, just
Of
one
course, of
aspect.
course.
What is one interesting is that in terms of Ibn Araby, and of course, like you have clearly mentioned about Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah, he was a great scholar of fiqh and hadith, and in fact, like the Abu Hassan Nadwi wrote a book regarding saviors of Islam, and he considered him as like a mujaddid, and many have considered him. Interestingly, with regards to Ibn Arabi, about Ibn Taymiyyah, right? But in regards, with regards to Ibn Arabi, one interesting thing that a lot of scholars have indicated is that, at least in the pre-modern Muslim world, there was a very significant influence of the Akbarian thought.
Yeah.
And that is something that perhaps other scholars may not have been able to have as much, at least at that time. And the works he has written combines a lot of aspects from different Islamic traditions. That includes Islamic philosophy, that includes Islamic mysticism, that includes numeric studies, that includes hadith and fiqh. So that is one thing that is very interesting to observe with regards to Ibn Arabi, is that his work compresses, it seems, all the different aspects of Islamic tradition that was present at his time. And that is something that is to be taken into consideration. Some people feel that it seems that at that time of the pre-modern world, a lot of work was like a commentary with regards to his work. I'll give an example. His work, Fusus al-Hikam, it has 100 commentaries at least. 100 commentaries have been written. So this is something, again, but I really like what you said, that at the end of the day, we need to recognize, it's like all these fuqaha and all these great scholars, they're like you're going to you're listening to a musical show, and you have all these instruments, right? And different people are playing different instruments, and from that a beautiful sound is coming. So all these
symphony,
exactly,
and it is truly a symphony
yes,
of Islam that we have. It's not a single instrument. I know the metaphor may be counterintuitive and somewhat ironic for people who consider music haram, but truly, I mean, that's a difference of opinion within Islam as well.
Exactly.
But it is a beautiful metaphor nonetheless, that there is a symphony of Islam, and it is all of these thoughts that are echoed, that are that are professed and expressed before us. So yeah, and if we are to look at people who are undeniable sources of influence, whether we like them or not, for example, if we were momentarily, Shaykh, to suspend our personal subjective preferences, now we could and look through Islamic history on who are figures that have shaped, whether, once again, completely devoid of our preferences, whether we like them or not, who have shaped the course and trajectory of Islam as it exists and is extant today and manifest in the world. Now, you will get right from the beginning great names: Imam Shaykh, Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Shafi'i, Imam Malik, and you'll start getting names as you come through. Imam Ahmad. You'll have the Aqidah school names. Abu Hassan al-Ash'ari will have many names who have influenced Islam, just as you mentioned Ibn Taymiyyah. Now, Ibn Taymiyyah, although I would feel that he, maybe in his time and the generations after him, was not so much. I would not feel he was as influential as he has become in these recent generations. But today, it is undeniable, whether people agree or disagree, that he has shaped, his thoughts have shaped the face of Islam on the globe today. We cannot deny that. I mean, the whole recent, last 100 years, Shaykh Ibn Taymiyyah has become a household name on how he's influenced, regardless of people's preferences, regardless of how they see him. Similarly, Shaykh Ibn Araby is a name that has shaped the face of Islam as it is practiced today throughout the world. Whether people agree with it or not, he is one of the undeniable forces that have really kept this tradition, have given it this contour and this iteration and this message of, along with certain characters, certain personalities, sorry, of that era. There was almost this, and maybe we can touch back on this, Sheikh. There was this kind of Cambrian explosion of mystic Sufic thought and expression in the 600s, 700s. All these great names that you hear today that shaped, whether it's going to be Maulana Rumi, Ibn Arabi, Abdul Qadir al-Jilani, you're going to get, Mu'inuddin Chishti, you're going to get so many, Abul Hasan al-Shadhili, you're going to get Shah Jalal of Bangladesh, you're going to get Nizamuddin Awliya, you're going to get all of these names, Baba Fariduddin, these names that have gone on that till today have shaped regional, local thought throughout the world. Sheikh Ibn Arabi is one of the key names of that century. So, yeah. With that in mind, Sheikh, I wanted to lead us. Somebody had asked a question here, and I think this is really something I wanted to bring the discussion to. And then, as we set forth, they'd asked that, oh, well, why don't I have a conversation about this with, let's say, some other mashayikh? And they've mentioned Hammads Saab. And on a side note, I'd love to have a conversation with Hammads Saab, whenever that is possible. But the reason they mentioned is because people disagree with Shaykh Ibn Arabi, and some people have accused. I've seen comments sometimes on my videos about Shaykh Ibn Arabi as if this is against the voice of reason somehow, against the rational.
Right.
And I wanted to bring that because I don't believe that this at all is against the voice of reason, the teachings, the legacy of Sheikh Ibn Arabi. But I wanted to bring that to you, this whole thing of the rational, because you too and have been through this journey. And the reason I'm highlighting this is because I've had people comment that, about me, that, you were on this, this kind of path of the voice of reason, of rational thinking. This seems to be some contradiction to them. Now, so yeah, your journey first, Sheikh, because you have also been a proponent of rational thought and so on. So I'd like you to,
Sure.
chime in for me
Thank
on
you.
this, and then, yeah,
So, first of all, it's a very good question. You have some scholars who do seem to perhaps misunderstand what Ibn Arabi is saying, and there's some reasons for that. First of all, they argue that his views are not rational, and secondly, they may also say that it's not based on Quran or Sunnah. So that may come from the more conservative camp. But those who are more from the rationalists, they might say it's not rational. Now, the thing is that, remember, I had mentioned before that, that there are two types of knowledge in the Islamic tradition. That is the aqli and the naqli. The aqli is the intellectual and the naqli is the transmitted. The transmitted knowledge is something that is related to rational aspects, whereas the intellectual one has the rational aspect, but it's more also, it recognizes the imaginal understanding of what is reality. Now, what happens is, when the moment we talk about rationality, what does it mean from an Islamic perspective? When we're using aql, the word aql also means to bind something. So Ibn al-Arabi is then saying when you're using just simply aql, that is rational thinking, you're limiting something. Now,
Mm,
why does he say that's problematic? And why does he say that, you know, why one has to look with two eyes? What does he mean by that? Look, the Quran clearly says, for example, that God, who was Sami, who Basir, and so forth. But he also says, Laysa kamislihi shay'un. So what Ibn al-Arabi is saying, what Sheikh al-Akbar is saying, that in order to understand the divine, and remember, the world is the emanation of the divine names, you have to see reality, the world around you, which is the manifestation of the divine names, from two perspectives: the tanzih and the tashbih. In other words, when you use your rational thinking, subhanallah amma yasifun, God is beyond everything, because because God is beyond everything. But at the same time, he is the hearer, he is the listener. How do you understand that? So that comes to the imaginal thinking, that comes to the khayal. Why? There's a hadith as well to support that. This is in Sahih Muslim. When the Prophet ﷺ was asked about ihsan, what did he say? An ta'budullah ka'annaka tara. The word here ka'annaka tara means as if you're seeing him. How do you see the divine? Through your imaginal thinking. So Ibn al-Arabi is not negating the rational thinking.
that's sorry to interrupt. That's
Yeah,
such a beautiful point. So just to reiterate that to the the listeners and the viewers, that this hadith, one of the most popular hadiths in the entire tradition of hadith, within Islam, is the hadith of Jibreel. That this is the one of, if you were to list, I don't know, 5 or 10 most popular hadith that exist in Islam, almost everybody would come up within that top 10 as the hadith of Jibreel. It's there in the Muwatta, it's in the major books of hadith, and it's about the person coming in and asking the Prophet these questions about what is Islam, what is so on, what is Iman. But in this, you have what is Ihsan. You've gone from Islam, this outward
yeah.
manifestation, to Iman, to this inward kind of expression or manifestation, and then something that is higher still, ihsan. And in that, the Prophet says, "An ta'budullaha ka'annaka tarahu," that you worship Allah as though you can
Yeah.
see Him. And I think this is such a beautiful explanation that you gave there, Sheikh. That how is it ka'annaka tarahu, as though you are seeing Him? But this Him that you are seeing, what is it?
فَأَيْنَمَا تُوَلُّ فَسَمَّ وَجْهُ اللَّهِ. Wherever you turn, there is the face of the divine. And that is how. And then the Quran also says that, are you going to believe in some parts of the Quran and reject other? So that is why Ibn Arabi is saying that see the divine, see the reality through both the rational faculty but also the imaginal faculty. And by
Yeah.
the way, like as you know, when we say Anta'budullah, it's just not simply worship, it means adore. So adore your Lord as if you see him.
Allah.
So the
Yeah.
imaginal leads to the love, it leads to proximity, and that's why it's tashbih. Whereas the tanzi leads to distance.
So
So yeah.
for the viewers there, that how are you seeing Allah?
Mhm.
You are seeing Him through not only your rational faculties, you're coming to understand Him, but through your imaginal faculties and modalities as well. So Allah, these two terms, that Allah speaks to His creation through these two mediums, if you like, of these two scopes. One is of tanzih, that Allah is transcendent, that Allah is transcendent. He is, and this especially in relation to shirk. In case anybody is about to think, they're worshipping statues or superstition, or Allah is transcendent. Ta'ala Allah ma yasifun. The other is through tashbih, Allah giving similarities, these kind of proximal um, similitudes, so you may understand. So when you find in a hadith Allah saying, look, He is merciful. Now, how do you understand mercy? Because you've seen mercy in the world.
And from
Allah
the
is Razaq. Yeah.
yeah. And that's the case. For example, when we see, for example, when God says, "My mercy precedes my wrath, my anger,"
Yeah.
I sometimes I give this example to my kids. I'm like, you see mercy from your mother's side, and you see anger from my side. And God has made as parents. So you see both the Jamal and the Jalal from him, because God names are seen through the Jamal and Jalal. And it is only the human being who's at that stage, because God taught Adam all the names. The Malaika were not taught all the names, but God taught Adam alayhi salam, all the names, as mentioned Surah Baqarah. So we are that creation that can see the divine names, that is Jalal and Jamal. And this is
Yeah.
done through the process of the two eyes. That's why Ibn Araby says in Fasul Yakam that if you see the reality through through these two eyes, you become the Imam.
And that, just to understand the dichotomy presented in our tradition, is one of Allah's Jamal, His beauty, and His Jalal. Now, Jalal, it's not, you see, this is not to say positive,
Yeah.
negative, but this is to say beauty, and then almost this awe.
Oh,
But the
yeah.
awe can almost terrify. That's the awe. You know, this term mysterium tremendum et fascinans, the great mystery that terrifies yet incredibly fascinates you. So this kind of awe of the glory of God, this Jalla Jalaluhu. So the word awesome being from that, something that strikes this kind of terror of its awe. But on the other side, something that it thrills you with its beauty, that this Jamal of Allah.
Right.
So, yeah, just to explain that. So, you've got just circling back to, we understand Allah through what Ibn Araby is saying, both of these. You have tanzih, transcendence, but you have tashbih. Hence, Allah, all these metaphors are given, all these understand Allah is light. Allahu nuru samawati wal ard. The metaphor of, do you think, does your mother love one of you? Of course, would she throw her child into the fire? Hell no. That What do you think of Allah then? He loves you, infinitely more than your mother. This similitude metaphor being drawn, that look, the rahim, the womb, is shijnatun min ar-Rahman. It is this kind of branch that stems from the Rahman, because the word is a derivative,
Exactly.
that Rahim and Rahman.
And
So, yeah,
if I may add, also, if you see in in other than our religious traditions, I mean, even when we go towards this contemporary knowledge, like my background, I did my PhD in sociology. To be honest, I feel, because I had my research uses a lot of quantitative analysis that I do, like multiple regression, all that. The reality is, while I'm doing all this quantitative research, and this all seems rational, but when I'm thinking about like connections between different papers, or when I'm thinking about generalization of some findings, what is happening? I am in a way using my imaginal thinking.
of
I
course.
am connecting whatever the data is to some
Yeah,
type of a connection. And that's why, like, even in contemporary education, we have this idea that, first it used to be a positivistic approach to be taken, but then there was the recognition that human feelings are also something that has to be recognized.
yeah.
So then the qualitative aspect came from knowledge and all that. And now the idea is that one should have mixed research done, where there's the
Of course.
quantitative aspect, but the human experiences as well. How
Yeah,
are
and
those
that is,
connected through the
yeah,
imaginal thinking? So you
and
can see, sorry, go ahead.
that is science. I mean, in the way that all of psychology, especially how we have it today, is based on quantitative and qualitative data. It's based on qualitative reports, qualitative research, which is about the experiential element. The and I do love how Dr. Ian McGilchrist as well highlights, and he's one of the leading, neuroscientists in the world. He's British. He highlights that the four modes of learning that he feels are the rational, the scientific. So he says, the rationale. So the rational mind, science, imagination, and intuition. So these are under, and I totally concur with what he's saying, that it's a shame that we as Muslims have somehow come to, lose this sight of the power of imagination.
And there,
And we think that it's somehow uh, anti-rational. No, it isn't.
no. And if I may add, people, especially like perhaps we have subcontinent scholars, especially who are quite rational, or those who take a positivistic approach, we need to recognize that the subcontinent was colonized, especially during the time where positivism was at its at its level of recognition, such that other thinking was rejected. So when India and subcontinent was colonized, the approach to take was that everything should be done in a mechanistic, in a very precise manner. So then you have
Mm,
these contemporary scholars of those times, and you have still that effect where they're everything trying to rationalize in such a way that they can be measured, for example, and that has an impact.
mm,
So the colonization is not simply the colonization of the land; it's the colonization of the mind as well, and that's the beauty way of now.
yeah,
We says go, unshackle that akal as that is binding you basically. See the reality, see the world from these two eyes. That is the khayal and also the rational thinking, and then you will see the
yeah.
whole picture.
And it is that, so just to
Yeah,
echo that yes, there was this there was this era that we, being mechanistically material was, so anchored into that, that was your kind of
worldview.
presentation of being rational. Now that's not to say that that isn't rational. That is rational as well, but rationality isn't just that. So the mystical tradition, this tradition which, um I don't mind calling it the mystical tradition. I know sometimes I've had some guests, they've said they don't like that term. I actually do like it. But in Arabic, this tradition, the mystical tradition, being called the tradition of Zhauq, of experience. And it's not just talking about, it's speaking of the mystics. So they're not just speaking of any kind of Zhauq, but they mean this Zhauqun Ruhani, this kind of spiritual tasting. So, and tasting being experiential. This, in no way, it may seem iconoclastic to, let's say, the mechanistic tradition, or this kind of empirical thought, because it relies on a different mode of expression, but it is not in any way counter reason. Like you couldn't disprove the this Ahlul Dhawq tradition by saying, well, it goes against Nazar, it goes against this sense of understanding that we have. It doesn't. It just has a different mode of expression and experience, but it's not against it. I would love to see people show me how, in any way, they feel. I mean, I'm sure they may feel this, but it isn't. That how is this against the voice of reason in any way? Mm.
And to echo that, if I may add, we have in tradition the idea of ilmul yaqeen, ainul yaqeen, haqqul yaqeen. The rational side can lead up till ilmul yaqeen and ainul yaqeen,
Yeah.
but it is that khayal that leads to haqqul yaqeen. I'll give you an example. Let's say someone hasn't tasted an apple, okay, and I tell them about its measurement, and I say that it's grown in this country from this tree.
Yeah.
They know it is an apple, but they won't know the taste of the apple unless they haven't tasted it. It's like
Yeah.
someone, you tell a person about fire. They heard it from reliable. That's a low level of certainty. They go to a higher level where they see a fire, but when will they get that actual experience? When they taste it. And that is where the whole aspect of that ilmuzak where you have spoken about comes into play. Even rational from scholars like Sufi, these great scholars, they're like this rational thing is like an emanation of the actual like highest level of the first intellect, for example. So the
Yeah.
problem is that the rational thinking, while it is sufficient in the sense of providing certain level of knowledge, it doesn't lead to the highest level of knowledge. And to use that to negate this imaginal thinking is problematic.
Yeah. And just to add to that, that at the heart of this deen, one thing I've come to learn, and I say learn, or to be realized, as in to be made more real to me in these last few years, which I don't. See, now it's weird. It's weird sometimes thinking, what did I know and didn't I know? Because the the fitrah of insan is when we are in a particular mode of knowing, we think we always knew it. It's difficult sometimes trying to experience yourself as not knowing something which you now know. So I'm not sure whether I totally didn't know this or I did know it, but it wasn't at the forefront. But that at the center of the deen is the sacred. And this the truly the concept, this thing, the sacred, it is the heart of the deen. And think I don't know whether I didn't know that or if I did know that, but I didn't realize it the way I realized it in the last few years. But I know it wasn't there in my prior discourse the way it emerged in these recent years. So at the heart of things is the sacred. But what is the sacred? See, the sacred has a rational explanation, but that's like the description of the apple. The
Exactly.
sacred is not information per se. It is a realization. It is a experience. It is a something that by tasting it or experiencing you enter into submission. It's not. So I feel that that's a key difference in my shift has been that this true realization that at the heart of this is the sacred of Islam, which can only truly be captured by tasting it. Now, you could sure talk about it all day, you could write books about it, you could argue rationally, philosophically, you can do all of that, but it doesn't, it still falls short. So, yeah, sure.
And like you mentioned, the center of this whole religion is the sacred, and that is what Tawheed, divine unity. And to experience that, one has to recognize the primordial love that exists between the creator and the creation. Before time itself, that the love exists. The Quran in Surah Maida, it says, "Yuhibbuhum wa yuhibbunahu." That is the
Yeah.
basis of everything.
That he loves them, he loves his creation, his
A-
people,
And
and they
therefore,
love him.
exactly. So now, once that happens, then the whole perspective changes, because
Oh,
then you see
sorry,
the.
sorry. Just to you said, and therefore.
Yes, I use the wow
Yeah,
in the
that's
sense
a
that,
much more. Yeah, that's much more powerful. Shukran
yeah,
for that. I appreciate that. That's
right?
not just and they love him, and therefore
They love it.
they love
Exactly.
him. That his love, yuhibbuhum, is the source and the kind of suburb that they can love him.
Right.
That's even more beautiful.
Right.
So shukran.
Sure.
Actually, I was just doing it much. Yeah, I was just saying, and they love him, but this is much more profound.
And with that, then what do we see? What happens is that when there's this recognition of love, one goes towards this inward journey through the Quran, which becomes a love letter. Like Rumi's Shaykh said, that the Quranic verses are love letters. And when, as a lover, you read the letters of your beloved, you don't find any faults in it. And clearly Allah says, for example, Allazi ahsana kulla shayin khalaqah. Everything He has created is beautiful. So wherever you turn and you see the face of your beloved, all you do is you just say Subhanallah and you fall in love and again. And you don't see anything negative. And then you recognize that there is no distance between you or him in truth. There's the hadith well known, Inna Allah Jamil yuhibbul Jamal.
Jamal, yeah.
So if he's saying yuhibbuhum, who is he loving? Yes, he is loving us, but he's actually loving himself, in the sense that he is seeing himself through that mirror.
Yeah,
Allah knows himself, but he then will to see himself through a mirror. We are that mirror. Al-mu'min mar'atul mu'min. The believer is the mirror of the other
no
of the
believer,
believer.
yeah. And
So
also the hadith that my servant doesn't continue with these with these
yeah,
good expressions except kuntu, I was
Yeah.
the hands by which he
Yeah.
grasps, the
It,
eye by which
and
he sees.
Ibn Arabi rahimahullah uses this hadith a lot of time. Probably the hadith that he used the most is this one, where he's that when Allah loves his servant, then he becomes his hearing through which he hears, his sight through which he sees, his
Yeah,
seeing through
and
which he sees.
can
Sorry,
I
go ahead.
just say that and I'd come across the explanations saying that it's not that Allah becomes, but that He was always. For kuntu, I
Yeah,
was, but you just didn't realize it.
exactly. Didn't
So I
realize it.
was already the hand by which you grasped,
Yeah.
the eye by which you saw, but you just didn't realize it.
No, exactly. This is what happens. The person recognizes where they're coming from, because the person is simply you can say the actuality of that, what do you call that? Aino Sabita, for example, that immutable entities.
Yes,
That is
yes.
the divine names,
Yeah,
right?
Sabita, yeah.
Yeah. So those are the divine names. And then we got this existence from him. So that is, at the end, we're nothing but simply, you can say, the manifestation of the divine names.
And just to add to what you said, Sheikh, about that Allah sees Himself in your beauty,
Yeah.
that what you also the Hadith Qudsi, the popular one, that had you visited the person, who would have
Yes.
you found when you visited him? You'd have found me,
Yeah.
Allah says.
And
Had you fed him,
um,
the hungry person, who would have you been feeding?
yeah.
Allah says you'd have found me.
Yes,
Had
exactly.
you given yeah,
So you have within that hadith two levels of understanding for the people. First, Allah says, I was sick and you didn't visit me. I was
yeah.
hungry and you didn't. And the person, Yallah, you're the Rabb. How can you be
How
ill?
can
How
you
can you,
be?
right?
Yeah.
Then Allah
That's the
says,
first. That's the
that's the highest.
transcendent.
eh,
But this is
That, that, yeah,
the this is, I don't want no shirk.
yeah,
This is so beautiful because Sheikh, this is the hadith that out of ghaira, for the love of Islam, certain Muslims will
yes,
repel
exactly.
this thought by saying no shirk. This could be shirk. Ironically, this is a hadith Qudsi that Allah is saying, I was sick, I was hungry, I was thirsty. And then now that caricature of this Muslim who, out of his love and jealousy, this kind of ghira, sorry, of Tawheed, saying, Ya Allah, how can you be? It perfectly caricatures this moment, doesn't it? That
Yes,
how can you be your Rabbul Alameen? This is shirk.
exactly. You also have that surah, for example, where about that person who, the idea that a person is thirsty, he sees a mirage, that
Yeah,
Quranic
yeah,
verse,
yeah.
right?
فَوَجَدَهُ
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm just looking for that one. And it's very interesting again how Ibn Arabi, again, we have to recognize Ibn Arabi says God doesn't speak in approximations. The Quran is the word of God, it is the truth. So the word, the letter itself is the truth. Therefore, its meanings are also the truth. So Ibn Arabi is not looking at this type of philosophy or this type of ism. He's simply looking at the letter, and I repeat, that is the truth for him. And so the meanings it has in it, those are all true as well. And because the Arabic language is polysemantic, it has multiple meanings for each word. He's able to give multiple understandings or multiple interpretations about it. So this is something interesting. And if I look at that particular verse that
Yeah.
I'm looking
Yeah,
for,
you can bring that up
yep,
because the Arabic language till then, I'll just tell, it is known for it having multiple meanings,
exactly.
multiple. It is something, and in the realm of fiqh, it's often this becomes a huge. In fact, Arabic has this thing, and you can get books on it, known as al-adad, the kind of opposites.
Yes.
So the words that are spelt, they're not just homophones or words that sound the same. They actually spelt the same, identical, but they will have the opposite, a did. And so you have that in Arabic all the time. Popular, you'll get words like quru in the Quran, the famous thing to do with the menstrual cycle. Is it to do with the entering the menstruation, or is it to do with the tohar, the period of purity? Both of which are called qura. So
Exactly.
you get this kind of debate going on all the time. But yeah,
Right. And
back to
so
you,
that
Sheikh.
hadith you mentioned, right? About that God said, I was sick and you didn't visit me. Now, the way Ibn Arabi is taking this literal approach, and that's why I say that his thinking or his perspective is rooted in the Quran and Sunnah. But the reason people have difficulty is that perhaps they don't recognize that literal doesn't mean just one interpretation. Literal, taking it, because the Arabic language is such, it has multiple meanings. That's why it is known as a
Mm.
polysemantic language or polyvocal language. So anyhow, that surah I was
And,
referring to.
and just as you're bringing that up, can I caveat that, Sheikh, by saying that, look, I totally champion the voice of criticality and critical thinking, and having, I always say that it's it's such an important skill. I would hear people say this before about Sheikh Ibn Arabi, but to be honest, I thought it was, astaghfirullah, just a bunch of. I thought people were just, when you adulation, like, when you love a scholar, you say, oh, like people, let's say, the love for Imam Abu Hanifa. Now we're going to say, well, Imam Abu Hanifa never broke his wudu for 40 years, or we're going to say something just excessively untrue, which we don't need to, because Imam Abu Hanifa is a great personality. He doesn't need that one unrealistic point. He's a great personality regardless. So I would hear people say that, Sheikh Ibn Arabi, oh, he's so refers to the Quran constantly, and he's so. I thought, come on, let's be, before, I wasn't anti Sheikh Ibn Arabi, but I didn't understand him as I've come to recently, and I thought this was just adulation and just exaggeration. But man, I truly experienced this. I was shocked, actually, shocked that it's no exaggeration, the amount of referencing he does to the Quran and Hadith, but he just does it in ways that you weren't expecting. So
Exactly.
that's the twist, the plot
Exactly.
twist. Yeah.
And an example of that might be, is this is in Surah Nur, verse 39, about that, that, and this is with regards to a disbeliever, right? That his amal are like the mirage in a lowland, which a thirsty one thinks is water fill. Then the verse is the following, which it says, حتى إذا جاءه لم يجده شيئا ووجد الله عنده. So a lot of people say that this word وجد الله عنده means that, then God will punish him. And Fakhruddin
Oh,
Razi
right.
mentions
Okay.
us that.
And what
However, Ibn
number
Arabi,
is that? Sorry,
yes,
Surah Nur, verse
39.
39. Okay, yeah.
So for some exegetes, for the Mufassirin, the idea is that then God will punish him. But Ibn Arabi is saying no. He's in fact saying that just as God revealed himself to Moses in the form of fire, alayhi salam, in the burning bush, all need is the need for God. And God shows himself to the creature in the form of his need. So this man who has been fooled by this mirage will find God.
So sorry, I just brought that up. So
Yes.
I just missed a part in between there. That was the verse.
Yes.
Um,
So if
yeah. So you can see وَالَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا, right? So we just كَفَرُوا أَعْمَالُهُمْ كَسَرَابٍ, that their actions are like a mirage. You can see that there. People that بِقِيعَةٍ يَحْسَبُهُ الظَّمْآنُ مَاءً, that a thirsty person would
right.
assume, obviously wrongly, that it is a water, until he reaches it. لم يجده شيئا, he found it to be nothing. ووجد الله عنده, and he found, and that's because this person
That
is now exhausted.
right.
They've collapsed,
Exactly.
and they find what? They find God there. ووجد الله عنده فوفاه حسابه,
Yeah.
and Allah settled his account with this person. Wallahu sari'ul hisab. Now, keeping in mind the verse began with وَالَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا,
Exactly.
those who disbelieved, أَعْمَالُهُمْ كَسَرَابٍ, their actions are like a mirage. In the end, the verse is coming to Allah settle their account. So this is understood to be negative. But you were saying, Sheikh,
Ibn, Ibn Arabi is taking it in a positive sense, again, because his hermeneutics, his understanding of Islam is based on mercy. And the reason he says is that, as in the Quran mentions, my mercy encompasses everything. Allah is saying, my mercy encompasses everything. So what he says is that this is a need. And the need is something that basically, that the way Musa alayhi salam, the way God subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed himself to Musa alayhi salam in the form of fire, because the reason was Musa alayhi salam wanted fire, right? He had gone out in search of fire. Similarly, in this case, this person will find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in this way, he will find mercy as well.
So he's saying for وَوَجَدَ اللَّهَ عِنْدَ, that
Yes,
even though he didn't find water, he found God.
exactly. Because all needs is a truth need for God. Whatever we are seeking in truth is actually simply the seeking of a divine name. I'll give you an example.
Wow.
When we want to look for, like, a lot of people, they want wealth. Well, the
Yeah.
wealth is coming from which divine name? Ar-Razaq.
Yeah.
A
And
lot of
Al-Ghani as well.
Al-Ghani,
And the wealth.
exactly,
Al-Ghani. Yeah,
exactly.
as well.
A person is seeking knowledge. I want to seek a lot of knowledge. Where's that? Where's that thing being derived from? From that divine name Al-Alim.
Mm.
And so every need is actually in truth the need for the divine. It's simply people that don't know. For
Yeah.
example, someone loves another person because they find that maybe their character beautiful, they conduct beautiful. Well, in truth, it's only God who is beautiful. Someone
Yeah.
wants power. In truth, it's only God who is Al-Qadir.
So in a way, this person's thirst, although in that moment there is this thirst for water, but root symbolic for an ever unquenched
And
thirst, in a
right,
way, that we
along
have
with
for the divine.
along with that, it also says clearly, Lam yajidhu shay'a. So he doesn't find anything. In other
Yeah, he
words, he
finds.
isn't not finding any secondary causes
And
anymore. No more secondary causes. No suburbs or anything. In truth, it's only the divine.
yeah, لم يجده شيئا ووجد الله عنده فوفاه حسابه.
And that's
That
why Ibn Arabi says it is when you find nothing that you find God, because God can only be found in the absence of things.
okay, that wait, whoa, okay, that is okay. So almost as if when this, this temptation
Yeah.
of something
Mm.
disappears.
Yes.
So are you saying in a way almost to be either to be rock bottom or to have almost been disheartened? But that's interesting because of the saying that Allah is with those whose hearts have been broken. Then,
Right. And
ana
doesn't it
indal munkasirati qulubuhum.
the hadith of ihsan, doesn't it continue? فَإِن لَمْ تَكُنْ, if I stop here, فَإِن لَمْ تَكُنْ فَتَرَاهُ. So when you're nothing, you're just nothing, you see him.
Yeah, that is amazing. That one, just for the viewers, that the famous hadith of the ihsan, that of Jibril that we're speaking of, that what is ihsan, that you worship Allah, as though you are actually seeing him. Now, but if you don't, then he is seeing you. But this Shaykh Ibn Arabi is highlighting that if you take this in its parts, for lam takun, if you cease to be,
Yeah.
tarahu,
Yeah.
at that stage you will see him.
And if I may add to that, Mufti Saab, in reality, all of us, including atheists, are simply worshiping the divine. Some know, some don't. Some are following what God has said, some are not. What is this based on? Again, just to give an example of how Ibn Arabi is a literalist, but how it gives a vast understanding. You have in Surah 17 Al Isra, verse 23, where it is that وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّاهُ. So here the word qada is a decree. And that's where
Yeah,
Ibn Taymiyyah rahimullah kind of disagree. But for Ibn Arabi, the divine decree is something that is happening, that it's ordained.
yeah,
So he is saying all of us are doing that. We
yeah.
know or we don't know. And now you can see
And
another sorry,
yeah,
go ahead.
no, because often when Allah uses the verb qada in the
Yeah.
Quran, he is speaking about this ruling. You see, so this verse, and your Lord decreed that none besides him shall be worshipped. وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُ Sorry, وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُ Sorry, let
Yeah,
me retranslate that. And your Lord decreed that you will never worship anybody except him.
exactly.
Now, أَلَّا تَعْبُدُ إِلَّا إِيَّهُ. Now, is this, here there is a debate. Is this is a commandment of God, it's a decree. وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ. Is this a shar'i decree? قضاء, is this amrun tashri'i, or amrun takweeni?
Exactly.
Is this a cosmic decree, or as in a creation decree, or is this a sharia decree? So is Allah here saying, وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ, your Lord decreed that it will be haram for you, Allah ta'budu illa iyahu, that you will never worship other than Him in a halal way, as in the
It,
jaiz way, in the shar'i way, in the legislative way? Or is this an amrun takweeni, meaning that creation, have all of creation, not just you, me, has been, if you want to use the word wired, predetermined to only worship God? Now, here they disagree that what is this amr? What is this imperative?
if I may add to that, as you know,
Yes.
both meanings can be this case that, because
Yeah,
as Ibn
of
Arabi is
course,
taking,
of
he's
course.
taking as an engendering command. The takwini is the
Yeah,
engendering command, and then you have the
yeah,
prescriptive command, right? Now,
the
in the
engineering command. Did you say?
engendering, engendering,
Oh,
engendering,
engendering. I
engendering
thought,
command.
oh, I
Oh,
like that.
no, no, engendering.
Engineering.
Sorry, no, 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 no,
I was going to say
engender.
divine engineering. I actually like that better.
Maybe it's a good way to say it, right?
Hmm.
So the
Divine
engendering, yeah,
engineering.
right, which is this
Mhm.
divine decree or the prescriptive. Now, another interesting part why one cannot disagree that Ibn Arabi is negating astaghfirullah, the Quran in this time, because he is rooted in Arabic. And Ibn Arabi is saying,
Yeah,
look, as long as it meets the Arabic way, as the Sahaba, the Arabs themselves understand, one cannot reject it because it's the meaning coming from the divine.
yeah.
But there's another verse which is very interesting, and this is the following verse: Inni tawakkaltu ala Allahi Rabbi wa Rabbikum ma min dabbatin illa huwa akhizum binasiyatiha inna Rabbi ala siratim mustaqim. There is
Mm.
no creature but that he holds its forelock. And then it says,
Yeah.
my Lord is on a path that is straight. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has held every creature's forelock, and because he's on the straight path, everyone is in a straight path for them.
And what this means for the viewers is that, just so we understand, this interpretation, both interpretations are valid. Now, sure, people who say it's only a Shar'i Amr, they may disagree with the others, but Ibn Arabi, if they say it's a Takweeni, meaning an engineering, a divine engineering, they're not disagreeing with the Shara'i perspective. They're not saying, oh, in Islam, it's, of course, in Islam, it is saying that you must only worship Allah. So a question here would be that, look, oh, well, if that's the case, that
Hmm.
everybody worships Allah, but they don't, because people fall into, let's say, superstition, people do shirk, people worship idols, people worship. And what Ibn Arabi is highlighting here, that the drive and this impulse within to worship is that kind of compass and that engineering to the divine. Now, this compass may be misapplied. Like you are misapplying it by, bowing to this statue. The pull towards this true magnetic north has been placed there by Allah. That inner pull is divine. Like you are yearning, pining to worship and submit to the divine. Except this capsule and shell might be, misapplying it to this statue and so on. That's how. Sorry, you were about to add to
It,
that. Yeah,
everyone has a point of reference. Another
yeah,
one, everyone has a divine face. Even if you talk about an atheist, they do have a point of reference. They're focused on La ilaha, so they have accepted
mm.
one part of the divine, that there is no divine except Allah. That is the
Yeah.
second part they're looking at. Now,
Illallah. They have to.
illallah.
Illallah.
So,
Illallah.
exactly.
Ayah. The other day,
Yeah.
we were teaching her illallah, and she kept saying illallah, illallah. Yeah, but yeah, sorry, carry on.
So the thing is that basically those people, the error of the mistake of the mushrik, the polytheist, is that, for example, they're engaging in a form of adoration that is not prescribed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But then the next question comes, well, why are they then being punished? And here also Ibn Arabi, based on the hermeneutics of mercy and beauty, explains how even the azab at the end becomes mercy. So the whole understanding of his looking of the reality is that there's nothing but mercy.
Yeah, just to, and I want to come back to this point because there's going to be a lot of questions
Yeah.
about that point. But just to add to what you're saying about that what everybody is seeing in creation, any wonder is a reflection of a divine attribute or a divine, like a divine print, so to speak. So let's say we see splendor, we see beauty. Now we are drawn to beauty because ultimately we are drawn to Allah. So we see this kind of glimpse of the term tajalli, this tajalli of this kind of divine expression, this divine print on earth of Allah's glory, of His creation, and people are drawn to that. And would that also be a point, worthy of saying that? See, one of the reasons, because I was asked this, Sheikh, and this was something I saw and understood, but to run it past you, that look, that why this this kind of, if people are worshipping wrongly,
Mhm.
what they're seeing, let's say, glimpses of the divine expression, whether it's in beauty, whether it's in Jesus, for example, because he's this, great personality, and they've seen glimpses, this mirror of divine manifestation. So they start worshipping him, and wrongly, of course, and things. But the language, and hence the language of the Quran towards them, towards Christians, although wrong it emphasizes that the shirk is wrong, that Jesus is not the Son of God, but the language towards the Christians is actually, one of compassion, one could argue, and understanding. But the language towards the mushrikeen of Mecca is in the Quran, arguably like a harsh, very harsh tone that is taken. And what was the reason for this distinction? Now, I was asked this, and I actually thought about it for a long while, Sheikh. Honestly, I was trying to get my head around, and I was trying to understand that. And what I found myself with was that, you see, whereas many people have seen, let's say, wrongly worshipped something by seeing this, maybe so much beauty or elegance or what they feel are like miracles in a person or something. Now, they've wrongly ended up worshipping that. That shirk has been condemned by Islam. But you see, the mushrikeen of Mecca, that there were some key reasons. That one, these kind of idols that they created, or these stones that they stood up, in that there wasn't a divine beauty that they saw in it. There wasn't this kind of, but rather it was this inherited tradition of superstition that it didn't reflect any of that. But when they were asked to just use your reason, then they refused to even reason. And they said, "Hada ma wajadna alayhi aba'ana."
Yes.
This is what we found our forefathers upon. That who are you to tell us differently? Even though it was just something they carved out of their own hands, some piece of mud, put it together. It wasn't, something that they thought, oh, this is so beautiful. It was just this tradition that was handed to them, rooted in superstition and oppression. And when asked to reason, they refused to. The one thing that Allah said, okay, use your reason. No, that this is what warranted that harsh tone to kind of wake them up. This was something I had responded with. I want your thoughts on it, Sheikh, and maybe what, because why this tone? Because by what you're saying, that look, you see the kind of divine work of art, in his creation, and people worship that, wrongly so. But then why the harsh tone to the mushrikeen of Mecca?
That's a good question, and I was just thinking, it just came this thought to me. I have to look into this more further, but the primary recipients of the divine revelation were the Arabs, that the
Yeah.
mushrikeen, right? And the people of the book had already received revelations, and the Quran is for everyone. But I feel because it is like they were the primary recipients, the focus was so much on them. It is like as a parent seeing your child going away. I'm giving example here, and again, you see, I'm using my khayal to explain this, the imaginal thinking. If I see my son, for example, doing something wrong and I'm explaining to him and still he's adamant, then there's more force of my expressions to tell him,
Mm.
don't do this. But for me, that is also a reflection of the divine love that God is showing to these mushrik as well in Arabia. That yes, the tone is harsh. However, it is an expression of another way of showing love to them, that because they have got a revelation that they didn't get before, and they've been told in so many ways, logically, through seeing the nature, through using your rational thinking, and they're
Yeah.
adamant not to listen.
But
And then, sorry, go ahead.
no, no, because I was sorry. Am I interrupting you?
No. So
Oh,
based on that, if you see, it's not immediately started, but because the moment they started rejecting the Prophet alayhi salatu
mm,
wasalam, that's a proof in itself. They rejected the signs, that is the worldly signs, the signs of the cosmos. They're rejecting intellect and everything. Then the tone becomes harsher. And then they're being told about this. But for me, it is, again, from that perspective, I see it is another expression of divine love for them.
because what I was going to say is that you see, because this question that there were Christians in the north, Christians in the south, dynasties, the Byzantines, the Axumites, or what was left of the Axumite kingdom, let's say, and the vestiges, the Christians of the Eastern Arabia, you had the Zoroastrians of the north as well, going into that part of, let's say, Iraq and so on, and Persia and the Sassanid Empire. But the strong tone taken towards the mushrikeen of Mecca, not obviously not so present whilst addressing the Christians of the north, or even the Christians that were present. Now, what I was seeing was that, just as you were saying, that look, something's been explained rationally, it's been spoken, articulated, the signs are in front of you, yet summun bukmun umyun, that they refuse to even see, refuse to listen, refuse to. And it's not even that they are saying that, look, oh, this is like, they're not even, their reasoning isn't one of that they see divine tajalli in this piece of mud that they've lumped together. It's just that, well, my granddad used to worship it,
Exactly.
so that, yeah, so it's like, don't tell me what. A stubbornness, a hubris.
That's exactly. And for me, that again, for at least I see this again when I'm, for example, explaining to my kids, my children, my sons, that, and they're not listening, I become a bit more forceful in my explanation. Why am I doing that? Because I see something is wrong. If they do something, let's say they're doing some wrong acts, it can have an impact going forward. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking to the Quraysh, the polytheists, the mushrikeen, he has first told them gently, he has sent a prophet, and the tone has become more severe to explain to them the consequences of their wrongful acts. Isn't this also an expression of divine love?
Yeah. I see. And bringing this back to what you were saying, Sheikh, about rahma.
Yes.
Yeah. So what would you, you said that about that, even in the end, eternal damnation, from a perspective, one would argue that even eternal damnation is rahmah.
Yes. Yes. And Ibn Araby says, for example, in this case, it's not, when Allah chooses a particular word, there must be a reason he didn't choose another word. Why did he use the word azab, which often we translate as, punishment? Well, I remember, and this is interesting, and this is why I tell a lot of people, please, read the tradition. Don't just listen to people. We have an tendency in the Muslim world simply taking a 5-minute clip and just trying to get an answer from that. Learn, seek knowledge, Anyhow, so I told that how the word azab can also have a meaning of sweetness, and some of my people I know, they were upset. They were just like rejecting, like, oh, what nonsense you're saying. Now here's the thing. Ibn Arabi says the word azab has been used because it also is from the same three letters, that azaba is derived sweetness. Now I'm going to give you a Quranic evidence for that. In two surahs, Surah 25, verse 53. Allah Azza wa Jal says, and I'm just going to read the part of it. وَهُوَ الَّذِي مَرَجَ الْبَحْرَيْنِ هَذَا أَزْبٌ فُرَاتٌ. Now the word here, the word has been azab, it's been used. Azbun, what does it mean? Azbun means fresh or sweet. And then again in Surah 35, verse 12, وَمَا يَسْتَوِي الْبَحْرَانِ هَذَا أَزْبٌ فُرَاتٌ. Again, the word has been used, which means one is fresh and sweet. So sweet or freshness has been used. So Ibn Arabi says, because remember, in the Quran it clearly says, His mercy encompasses everything. And he himself said, Kataba Rabbukum ala nafsi rahma. So he says, yes, he believes there's going to be punishment. Of course, there's going to be punishment. He takes what the Quran says, but the ending will be on mercy, because mercy prevails over wrath. Allah's mercy prevails over his wrath. So, excuse me, while hell is something that remains, its condition changes, its state changes. And he gives an example. Why are the malaika in there, like they're the angels of hellfire, why are they in that place? They're not being punished. So then Ibn Arabi says that place changes in a way that, yes, it remains hell, but the composition of that human body, its nature, is much more suitable for hellfire, because their nature is something that is more, that, when we talk about Iblis, he was made from fire. And what did he show? Proudness. So those people who have proudness in them and arrogance in them, they're more suitable for an environment such as that. In fact, he goes to that extent, saying that their composition is not balanced. And had they gone to paradise, it would be problematic from them. They wouldn't receive that felicity which they're receiving in hellfire. So he bases that the azab at the end it converts into which becomes sweetness, or you can say agreeableness to their nature. And it is true, we see in the animal kingdom, certain animals are more accommodated, like they are more they can accommodate, or they are more suitable to a certain environment rather than others. We see that in in us as well. Those who live in winter, for example, in cold places, are more acclimatized, are more comfortable than living in a warm place. So this is how Ibn Arabi looks at this perspective.
I see. So somebody just wanting an explanation on that, let's say.
Yeah.
They're saying, are you stating that the punishment of the akhirah, even that, is a state of mercy? That's what you're saying. That's what Shaykh Ibn Arabi is saying. Sorry, you're explaining. How could that be? Yeah. So people just let's say people trying to understand that.
Right. So first of all, Ibn Arabi says pain cannot be eternal. Pain cannot be eternal because mercy embraces everything. So then Ibn Arabi says that the state of hell will remain what it is, but mercy will produce a felicity without the form or the status of the infernal abode being modified.
And
so, sorry, go ahead.
Have you got the number of the verse? I'm just going to.
Sorry, with regards to the sweetness of the water, you were
the sweetness of.
So you can look at Surah 25, verse 53, or you can look at Surah 35, Surah Al-Fatih, verse 12, whichever one you would like to look at. Are you able to find it?
Right, sorry, I just lost you there for a moment. Well, I was just bringing that up. Which one were you looking at? Verse of what surah?
Yeah, you can look at either verse 20, Surah 25, verse 53, Surah Al-Furqan, verse 53, or you can look at Surah Fatih 35, that's Surah 35, verse 12.
So let's see, the one. No, not that one. Not the Barzakh and Hijr Mahjuran. What's the other one? Verse 35, Surah 35, did you say?
Yes, Surah 35, verse 12.
It's 12. Right. Okay. So just to bring that up. Surah Fatir. Yeah. We're speaking about. Um, oh, right. No, no. Oh, right. So you're talking about the ones with drinking,
Yes, with
the
drinking.
water.
Yes.
Oh, right. No, no. Sorry. I thought you were talking about the other verse of, that the fire is from within a mercy for them.
Oh no, no, I wasn't referring. I'm just saying
Oh,
that
you're.
no,
Oh,
no,
right.
no, no.
Okay.
I
I
was
thought you.
referring to the verses in terms of why the word azab has been used. Ibn Arabi is saying the word
Oh,
azab has been
okay.
used.
Just showing the term. Okay, so in
The
this,
term,
yes. So in this, just so people could
yeah,
see, the term. Let me just put that there.
and
So the term for adbun furatun is
yeah,
used in the Quran on a
yeah,
number. To be fair, it's used, on more than one occasion.
yes,
Adb in Arabic, uh, as the word adab, both share the same root, etymological
yes,
root, and it comes from the word sweetness. Azb, as you can see there, ma yastawil bahran, the two seas are not, equal. Hada azbun furatun sa'ighun sharabu, about the two seas, one being salty, one having water that is drinkable and sweet. So, but this appears on more than one occasion.
exactly.
Right?
And
Yeah.
if I may add, doesn't the Quran say my mercy encompasses everything? So isn't the hellfire included in everything? In fact, this is the argument that even Iblis used against another sheikh.
Yeah.
And Ibn Arabi mentions this talk that Iblis had with a certain sheikh by the name of Sahal bin Abdullah. And what does he
Okay.
say? He says, the last thing that Iblis said to Sahal was this: Allah said, my mercy embraces all things, which is an affirmation destined to all. Now, you must have noticed that I am one of those things without any doubt. The word all, kul,
Yeah.
implies the
So he's also,
universal.
as in Iblis is also from the Kul.
Yes,
Is
he's
that
saying
is that
I'm
your
exactly. I'm from the kul as well.
ah?
So then
You got
Ibn
you got to admit that this Iblis knows how to debate. Huh?
right. So Sahal then says, I did not think you would say that. Then what Iblis says, oh Sahal, al taqyid means limitation is your attribute and not Allah's. You are limiting Allah's attribute, and
Sorry,
Allah's
say that
attribute.
again. Sorry, say that part. I missed
So
that.
the
The
same, when you said Iblis is a very clever,
yeah, a
debater,
debater.
right? So this is
Yeah.
what Sahel replies: I did not think that your lack of knowledge would go that far. The response
Okay.
of Iblis is, I did not think that you would say that, O Sahal. Do you not know that limitation, had, is your
Yeah.
attribute and not his, that is of Allah?
Yeah. Not Allah's.
Then Ibn Arabi says, at that moment, I realized that Iblis Rajim possessed incontestable knowledge, and that in this problem, it is he who was Sahal's teacher. So
Oh
will not
wow.
will not hell
And that's an
contain? Yeah.
extract from what? Is that from? That's from the Futuhat or from?
Yes, from the
That's
Futuhat,
from the yeah from the
from
Futuhat.
this book that I have. So my point is, when people say about hellfire, will it not be mercy?
Mm.
Again, one has to see it from the eyes of from love, from divine love. When you see everything from the eyes of divine love,
Is it so?
yeah,
Just if somebody was to ask that, when
yeah,
you say mercy,
yes.
do you mean, to get some taqrib al-faham, some kind of proximal understanding? Do you mean that it, like a distancing from God? Is that what you mean? Do you mean it is a punishment, still like a pain? Do you mean it's because one could argue that, well, cleansing from one perspective is a mercy. So they could say, well, fire cleanses, like you purify metals in fire. So, one could say, well, that's a cleansing. So, from that symbolic sense, one could say, oh, is this a mercy cleansing you of your sins? But Ibn Arabi is not just using it in that sense of saying like cleaning metal from. Uh,
He kind of
oh,
tries to, in a way,
yeah,
there can be interpretation based on that,
yeah,
because what happens is that we have narrations where a person will enter heaven after a certain time in hellfire because he has been cleansed, right? Now
yeah.
what Ibn Arabi is saying is that every person is put in a place that is that is corresponding to their composition, to their own nature. And that
Mm,
is why he's saying that some people will remain in hellfire because their composition is not of balance. Had they gone in heaven, they would not find that bliss, that felicity as they would find in hell, because that accommodates their nature. And their nature is like a fire.
okay. Obviously, the afterlife, in its true understanding, is
It,
incomprehensible to us as of where we only have approximation and our mentality. But are you? Do you like what is he saying in the sense that a is he saying that, because you have, is he saying it is an action, like, are they being, is it a torment but it's just not eternal? Or is he saying that the torment is, it's maybe not how people are picturing the torment, but it's still a torment, but it's a different, it's one that is like, what is he, I'm trying to,
yeah,
just so
my
people can make sense of
right.
what you're.
My understanding is what I understood. Allah forgive me if I'm wrong. Is that he recognizes he's a person who takes literal understanding. If there is
Yeah.
torment, he will say there is torment. But then what he's
Mhm.
trying to say is that that will eventually end. Now, at the same time, Ibn Arabi will also recognize that the biggest torment, or the most severe torment is separation from the beloved. And that is why you have shuyukh who do mention that the worst punishment is being away from the beloved, that is the divine beloved. So, does he say that there is torment? Yes, he says there, like he would take that because the Quran talks about those things. But at the same time, he will say that the end will be mercy. And he
Mhm.
says that mercy, at the end, that torment doesn't remain as such. The type of nourishment that they get corresponds to the nature of that person who is living there. And that is how Ibn Arabi is taking that. He's not, the thing is, a lot of times we want to see it as symbolic or meaning interpretations. But my
Yeah.
reading, as far as I understood, may Allah forgive me, is that he is a person who takes literal. But within that, he
Yeah.
finds mercy within
That
it.
it is, yeah. And I was, you see, the verse that, because when I was reading about what, because I was trying to understand this from Ibn Arabi, and obviously it's very, the nature of it is complex, because on one hand he's very clear for, affirming
He does,
the adab and
yeah,
so on.
he does
He's
not
very
deny,
clear. He doesn't deny that
no.
there isn't an adab, but then he, on the other hand, has that. Now I'm trying to, let me just bring up
Yeah.
that
What
verse.
he takes it is that hell will remain eternal, but the pain will go away. And that pain out of the mercy will become something that is blissful, that is felicity for those people in the hellfire. That is how he is taking it. Of course, you have other perspectives. Hello, can others hear me? I'm not sure. Hello.
Yes, hello. Yep, yep, we can hear you.
Oh,
You're
okay.
live.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, you're
sorry.
live.
Because
No, no,
I
no.
there was hanging freezing. So anyhow, as I was saying, Ibn Arabi does not deny the rejection of hellfire as the way it is, in the sense that, he believes there's hellfire. But what he's saying is that pain is not going to be eternal. Hellfire is going to be eternal. But what happens that mercy, since embraces everything, that mercy will produce for those who are in the hellfire a felicity without the form of the status of the internal abode being modified. So the constitution is such now that it has accommodated or it has adjusted to the environment that they are in. And if so, that
Yeah.
is one way he takes. For example, we do see how human nature itself in this present world. For
So
example, if you,
this was the
yeah.
verse that I had seen,
Mhm.
read Shaykh Ibn Arabi speaking about. Now, Surah Hadid, verse 13. يوم يقول المنافقون والمنافقات للذين آمنوا انظرونا نقتبس من نوركم. That, those who are damned, especially from the munafiqat, who you can imagine are in the worst pits or stage of hell, they say to those of faith, unzuruna, that naqtabis min nurikum, they want to take from the light of the believers, that let us take from your light. um uh, قِيلَ ارْجِعُوا وَرَاءَكُمْ. So they're told to return, that, فَالْتَمِسُوا نُورًا, that they're, go, like, get away from the believers and seek your light. فَضُرِبَ بَيْنَهُمْ بِسُورٍ لَهُ بَابٍ. That between, for these hypocrites, there is this fence, this wall that is set up, this kind of, this great, barrier here, this door. It's used as door, but you can see there as a kind of barrier between them, a wall, with a gate, as you can see in the translation. بَاطِنُهُ فِيهِ الرَّحْمَةِ. You see that between them on the inner side, like internal batin, from within, it is a mercy. وَظَاهِرُهُ مِنْ قِبْلِهِ الْعَذَابِ, although from its apparent it appears as a punishment to them. So this was the verse, Surah Hadid, verse 13, that I had seen a discussion of Shaykh Ibn Araby on explaining. But once again, that even the adhab of the akhirah has this kind of that weirdly it has some form of almost ladha for them. And he was
Yes.
explaining that it has weirdly some form of pleasure. That, and there's another verse which he uses as well, where that are these not the things that you would find pleasure in? Something about it brings that that they would find pleasure in those actions in the world. That there is that this verse is brought as well. And then what's emphasized is the that you see this this kind of being, this separate, now that the veils have been removed, you know, about God, this inner yearning and pining and this distance from God, it causes that suffering as well. It adds
Yes.
to the whole
Yes.
suffering. But it's not, just to clarify, um it's not to say that there is no hell or anything, there's no damnation. There is not, that's not what I had read from or what I was understanding from Ibn Arabi, but that somehow that torment, they find a kind of pleasure from it. This
Yes.
is what I was understanding. So it's
Yeah.
not so much to say um,
We, if,
that he's saying
yeah,
everybody is in heaven in the afterlife.
no.
He's not saying that. Yeah,
Ibn Arabi is not, and we have some people who might say that all these are symbolically, and they might find other interpretation. But for Ibn Arabi, he's not a rejecter. He's not a denier of
yeah,
the hereafter. He's not a denier of the punishment of hell fire. He recognizes that. But what he is doing is through that hermeneutics of mercy, he changes the whole thing. Because in the Muslim, you have in the, especially, in the majority understanding is that someone who goes into hellfire is eternally damned. He's saying that is not the case. And then you also know there's the other opinion, which is also from Umar radiallahu anhu, that he says that hellfire will be extinguished. And
I
interestingly,
mean,
the
this,
Scot,
to be fair, is
yeah,
actually the opinion of Ibn Taymiyyah and
exactly. And
definitely of Ibn Qayyim al-Jawzi. At least I know that a lot of the, Ibn Taymiyyah kind of
and
followers try to distance him from it, but it's in Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziya's book, isn't it?
Secondly, what I understood, and my preliminary understand of that narration is that the only argument they have is that, oh, it cannot be Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu because Hassan al-Basri has narrated a mursal riwayat. So he doesn't
Mm,
mention, but as we know in the Hanaf and the Malaika, even Maliki Maslak, sorry, mursal riwayat is acceptable. And after
mm,
Hassan al-Basri, the chain is sound in the transmission. So my point is that I don't think a person like Hassan al-Basri is going to falsely attribute something to Umar radiallahu anhu when he says
yeah.
that hell will be extinguished. That is, you have that perspective.
Yeah,
Now,
and it
yeah,
is also, I think, transmitted from Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu
yes,
an and a few of the Salaf, and I think Bin Baz has a fatwa on it as well, where he, although he's not affirming it, but he's narrating that this has been transmitted from some of the Salaf, and the reason why, once again, Bin Baz and other people have had to comment is because there is actually a risala by Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah on Fana'un Nar,
yes,
on the perishing of the fire, and it's and this whole thing, he's in it, I think he's challenging people who are challenging this notion, and he is saying it's from Ibn Taymiyyah as well, although I think some followers try to distance Ibn Taymiyyah, but they leave Ibn Qayyim to it. But
exactly.
yeah,
So from this perspective, we can see that if you're just talking about Ibn Arabi's worldview, it is rooted in Quran and Hadith. Now, the problem is for many Muslims, and this is where the rational thinking comes limits. Ibn al-Arabi, when he say become maqam la maqam, the station of no station, you're able to take the contradictory attributes and everything and recognize that these are all the divine names that you are witnessing. When individuals say, oh, how is this possible? Oh, Ibn Arabi is going against the Hadith or the Quran. Maybe, and this shows this is the another benefit of taking this approach, that a person becomes humble in the sense that they recognize that their knowledge is not the knowledge, that there are other views that can be
Yeah.
present. And that's where you recognize that the tradition of Islamic thinking is vast, and it allows you to see reality from different perspectives, because the end of the day, whichever view you take, that does not extinguish, that does not limit the divine reality, because the divine reality, that is Allah, is far above anything we can understand. But if we
Yeah.
circle back to what is the essence of Islam, it is that search for that sacred, and that is that divine beloved. And that is where Ibn al-Arabi is leading to people, that through the following of the Sharia, through the acts of the Sharia, becomes
Yeah.
such that you're
And
hearing. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
no, sorry, and this was another verse just to add to that, that you can see from Surah Hud,
Mm.
where you get right there 106, speaking of people in the in eternal damnation, the fire. فَأَمَّا الَّذِينَ شَقُوا فَفِي النَّارِ لَهُمْ فِيهَا زَفِيرٌ وَشَهِيقٌ. As for those bound for misery, they will be in the fire, where they will be sighing and gasping, that خَالِدِينَ فِيهَا, that forever in it, مَا دَامَتِ السَّمَاوَاتُ وَالْأَرْضِ, as long as the heavens and earth endures. Illa ma sha'a rabbuk. Now, under this discussion, you will find this tafsir as well, this debate in some
Exactly.
of the tafsir book, that they will be in the hellfire forever, illa, except, illa ma sha'a rabbuk, except what your Lord wishes. So this then causes a whole debate that, wait a minute, why is there an illa there? Except, unless,
Right.
what your Lord wills. So now some people would say, well, they'll find another expression for that. But if you read the tafsir to do with this, Surah Hud, verse 107, you will see as well in some of the tafsir this discussion being brought up. Those man qala bi fana'in nar, who said that the perishing of the fire, of the damnation, and you'll see some of the references to the Salaf. In some of the books, you'll find, depending how late the Mufassirin are, references to Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah, references to Ibn Taymiyyah, amongst other people. And yeah, just to highlight that.
And so, adding to that, I would just say is that, when a person is trying to understand these different perspectives, they shouldn't just limit it from what they understand their understanding is, because their understanding is simply understanding of Islam. That is a reflection of their own thinking. Islam is beyond that. These shuyukh, like I was speaking to you before this talk, Mufti Abul Is, I told you that we have, at least in the biography of Ibn Arabi, that he studied with at least 70 shuyukh. Some he studied like the Qiratu Sabah, 7 recitations, the multiple readings of the Quran. He studied Bukhari, he studied Muslim. One can disagree, but then one should also seek knowledge. I see a lot of individuals, how many have studied? How many people have studied with shuyukh or studied books?
His principle, his hermeneutic, his usul of rahmah, of mercy being, and this divine love,
Yes.
that is at the heart of everything. This thing of that Allah, this hadith, that the rahim, the womb, is this torn branch, or sorry, this kind of rooted branch coming from Rahman. And in some hadith, it's made um, more illustrative by saying it is a shijna. Shijna is this kind of this something like a root that stems. It has this shijnatun min ar-Rahman, but in some it says shijnatun akhida, that it is this root, this kind of mycelium structure root, akhida بحقوة الشيطان بحقوة الرحمن استغفر بحقوة الرحمن, or it mentions حقوة is actually the waistband. By the waistband of Rahman, it is clinging on. And in بحقوة الشيطان, بحقوة Rahman, and there is another term as well, actually. Hujza, sorry. Hujza and Haqq. Now it's interesting, those are not the more popular, but they are found in some of the Hanbali Aqidah texts, because they then affirm that attribute of Haqq and Hujza. But this illustration, almost illustrative description of trying to root things into mercy, and why it's giving the womb as an example, because of why, the mercy aspect that people associate with a mother. They don't. I mean, on Earth, if you were to think of our human psychosocial entities, and you were to give one concept that symbolizes mercy to people, you were to use one word that almost anybody could agree on. I mean, so if you gave religion, it wouldn't, maybe everybody wouldn't agree on that. But the symbol mother would be almost, an encapsulating symbol for mercy. And yeah,
If I may add to that, we have that hadith, the well-known hadith that Allah made mercy into 100 parts. That one part
yeah,
has been descended to this world, and it's through that. I'm just giving the meaning of it. Is this mercy is that where a horse raises a hoof over its child for fear of trampling? So even the mercy that is seen among the animal kingdom or that is seen among human beings is from that one part. But the interesting is, and this is in Sahih Muslim, then the Prophet ﷺ said that Allah has kept 99 parts of mercy to show to his servants on the day of resurrection. So if we see this one part of mercy that, for example, a mother shows towards her child in this dunya, the 99
yeah,
part remains in the akhirah. Now,
yeah,
doesn't the hadith also say have good opinion about your Lord? And the
yeah, yeah,
people who do not trust God, they have bad views or negative views about Allah. Shouldn't we have positive view, good view about Allah? And then this process of love transformation that even Ibn Araby is talking about, there is a stage where the person does not care whether he's put into hell or heaven, because
yeah.
even that is a selfish sign. So this whole journey is not about trying to go into heaven or
Because
hell.
yeah,
They are trying to say that. Sorry,
I'm
just
so
one
glad
second.
you brought that up.
They are
Yeah,
trying to say that, look, even if you are hoping to go into paradise and that's why you're worshiping, that's not true love. That is selfish needs you're showing. That you're loving Allah for something you are gaining. So when you're gaining something that is not from another person, that's why you're loving that
yeah.
person. That's not true love. True love is when whatever the divine beloved decides, you're content with that. You're like, I'm
Because
done.
that is a key almost hallmark of this tradition of
Yes.
Zhauq,
Yes.
of the mystics, has been right from the Salaf's time, right from Rabi al-Adawiyya and other people coming right down, that they transmitted this thing of these concepts of heaven and hell have distracted people. They would often say that, heaven and hell has become an unfortunate distraction from the true goal, which is Allah Himself.
Now it
And
is
and it's and although it is, we're not saying we're not saying in a dichotomy of right and wrong,
Allah out of His
but
mercy, just like the hadith we were talking about, that Allah said, "I was ill and you did not visit me," and then immediately the person says, "Oh Lord, you're the Rabb, how can you get ill?" And then He said, "If you found someone, that person, had you gone to him, you would have found me." We need to recognize people have different personalities. Some do seek rewards, and Allah out of His
yeah,
mercy has provided reward. Some people
yeah,
actually are afraid of punishment, so Allah has mentioned punishments as well.
yeah,
But then the aim, the true aspect of Islam is to fall in love with the actual beloved, to
yeah.
find what your relationship
I
is.
love that you added and
This,
mentioned that, because it's so important that Allah's creation, we the people, have different personalities, different spectrums, different, like, let's say there is a spectrum. There is going to be a certain point on this. There are certain people who they are drawn to, certain people who are only motivated by sanctions. To them, it's not even a reward, it's that they don't want to be in trouble. And I've personally met people like this, and I'm sure we all have, that to them, they will tell you, they're more driven by not being in trouble and not by loss and suffering than they are for reward. But then you'll get some who are more driven for reward than anything else. And these are all valuable. It's not to deny that, Allah in the Quran says, وَسَارِعُوا إِلَى جَنَّةٍ, you know, that strive towards a Jannah, the arduha samawati wal ard, this is how vast it is. So you are being, وَفِي ذَلِكَ فَلْيَتَنَافَسِ الْمُتَنَافِسُونَ, استبقوا الخيرات, that why don't you compete in good actions? Now, this is all valid, it's all beautiful, but to the people of Dhawq, to the mystic tradition, there is a higher order than this. This is fine. It is part of the spectrum. It is about, there's some people driven for rules. They've driven for, and I've spoken in the past as well in a Lacanian sense. In psychoanalysis, it is referred to as a metonymic and a metaphoric relationship. But here, you have this, but then you have a higher order. The higher order is Allah Himself. That all of this is a lower order. It's still valid, it's still beautiful, but there is a higher order, and that is the divine Himself. That sure, you do this, that you worship Allah, not out of some people might worship out of a sense of fear, some people out of a sense of reward, but no, out of this love for Allah Himself.
And when we know that Walillahi asmal husna, and the word husna is from hasana, which means both good and beautiful, then you will never see any issues that, and this is one of the outward aspects when a person takes this view, all the challenges they're having in their lives, they will just simply smile. And we know the person in this hadith, the person who smiled the most was the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He lost his wife, he lost his children, except Bibi Fatima alayhi salam. Yet he was the most content. Why? Maybe, perhaps one reason might be because he saw the divine reality. When we use the word tajalli itself, it's derived from the word Quran itself, because where Musa alayhi salam is seeking. So that word has been used.
In fact, in the Quran, it mentions that فَلَمَّا تَجَلَّى رَبُّهُ لِلْجَبَلِ, and when his Lord expressed his himself to the mountain. Now, what is this divine expression, this theophany, this tajalli? And you'll see, and I showed it in my last one of my recent Islamic psychology sessions, that many of the Mufassirin, I believe Ibn Taymiyyah himself, was it Ibn Taymiyyah, Ibn Kathir transmits it, that it was said that the Lord revealed of His glory a thumbnail amount. They say, they use the example, I'm saying a lot of the Hanabila had used that example. So it is, I'm not saying that is how it is, I'm saying that's how they transmitted it. But Allah revealed, it says, when His glory could not be handled, even a tiny amount cannot be handled to by creation, in that sense of His true essence. So so this is used in the Quran. Exactly. It is a verse of the Quran.
And another thing, it is only the heart of the believers that can contain the divine. And again, when we talk about this, often a person might hear, oh, there's any hadith like this. Well, one needs to recognize there are certain...
Isn't a hadith like what? Sorry.
Like, for example, the heaven and the earth cannot contain me, but the heart of the believer can contain me.
This
yes.
Right?
Right.
It's so, however, weak, like people say, weak or fabricated.
Nevertheless, there is another hadith that perhaps people should consider. That,
but I think it's a beautiful teaching. Right. Beautiful teaching. Yeah.
But there's
that none, and those who haven't, that the heavens and the earth cannot contain me, but yet the heart of a believer can.
And though it might not be, there is another hadith which talks about the vessels of Allah. And then the narration mentions, and this is Qawi, or at least Hassan, in the sense the vessels of your Lord is the heart of a person, of the believer whose heart is soft. So that is another narration supporting this way of thinking, that it is the heart that can see the divine.
Do you have the Arabic?
Yes, I do. Just give me a second. So just give me a second. I had taken this hadith. And again, my point of mentioning all these is to show that Ibn Araby's thinking is not based on some hearsay or some philosophy. It's based on the Quran or the hadith. So by the way, this narration has been considered qawi by Shaykh Albani rahimullah. And the hadith is, really, Allah has vessels among the people of the heart of the earth, and the vessels of your Lord are the hearts of His righteous servants. The most beloved of them to Him are the softest and most tender of them.
And what bil Arabiya?
Oh, in the Arabic? Oh, sure. Yes, I do. I'll just send you the link as well, so you can see.
Yeah. If you can send it here, I'll just open it up. All right. Until then, there's a question. Whilst you send that, I'll just read the question, and I'll add to that. And I know we have, there was so much I want to discuss, but we have gone on for quite a while today. So we'll take this and then these 1 2 questions, and then we'll wrap this. But if permitting, Sheikh, I'd love to then have you back for a second round where we can go through. I know there were I wanted to discuss with you. There was a text, a book that you'd been going through an ocean without a shore. There was a few other topics as well, all related to the theme of Shaykh Ibn Araby that I wanted to discuss. But sure, if you send that link for now, and I'll just bring up these
Yes.
1 2 questions. So we've got here,
Mhm.
somebody has said, um, first of all, there's a question. I'll come back to this in a moment. It says mysticism is not allowed in Islam. Now, of course, it is. I mean, it's one of the, you see, something we have to understand is, and this is something, even admittedly, I feel I have had to come to terms with in recent kind of times through this kind of journey that I've been on, in understanding that, you see, Islam, that there are many, you know, many pathways within Islam, many kind of views, many lenses. Sometimes some of them we don't agree with, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Now, I could say, for example, I don't agree with something, and and but what I would say is, for example, this is a view. It is on trial. This is why so many people disbelieve in it. This is why some people do accept it. Now you can decide. You, at the end of the day, you might think, well, that makes sense to me, that doesn't. And sure, maybe you don't decide, but regardless, for me to deny something that is an entire tradition of Islam, like mysticism, it's one of the kind of backbone of the Sufi kind of
And
tradition of ihsan within Islam, which arguably is the majority of the entire Muslim world.
exactly.
If
And
you
if
went to, yeah, sorry,
sorry, if I may add to this
of
question, what
course,
you've just to kind of add to that, you have actually, if you look at the Hadith of Jibril, you see these different groups of scholars kind of embracing certain aspects of this hadith. For example, when we talk about the 5 pillars of Islam, who is looking to that? The fuqaha. They are
yeah,
managing that. When it comes to the issue of iman, so first question was regarding Islam, there are the 5 pillars. Those are the fuqaha who explain to us how to pray on all these things, and the muhaddisin who are authenticating the narrations and all that. But then you also have the, when it comes to the question of iman, who's looking to that? Those are the mutakallim. But the third aspect, ihsan, that is those who are the Sufis, because they've recognized that in order to adore the Lord, antabudullah, to adore the Lord, Allah, you need to antabudullah ka'annaka tara. Worship Allah as if you see Him. How does that come through? That comes through that understanding where you use your imaginal thinking. So remember, the whole religion, just like a table, if one leg of a table is removed, the table can fall. If these Sufis had not focused on ihsan, we would have lost a significant aspect. And that may be the reason. And we can see the symptom in the contemporary world. Why is it that, for example, we are not able to navigate contemporary thinking? And I'll tell you something, within these Sufi text, you find answers to contemporary challenges, for example, regarding consciousness. Now, consciousness is a problem. And there are two
yeah,
types of that. There's the heart problem consciousness. You'll find in
yeah,
the Sufi texts about this. You'll find a
yeah,
lot of things from an intellectual questions that have been raised by people like Derrida. That is one of the things that Mufti Abu Layth and I want to talk about. Derrida is saying that language is like, it's simply, uh, um, what do you call that? It's simply not either it can be a deterministic, so language either leads to your world reality, or it can be subjective. And how Ibn Arabi takes a different approach. It's not the fuqaha, it's not those scholars who are focused on the exoteric aspect can provide answer. Because, and the reason, that is the reason I had to study all these shuyukh, that is Ibn Arabi, Mullah Sadr, Rumi, because I had these existential questions. I had these intellectual questions where the social sciences says that everything is subjective, that all
mm,
interpretations are subjective. If that is the case, where's the truth? And that is why it's so important. But sadly, in the Muslim world, this aspect is missing. And before, I think, judging about all these things, I think people need to recognize that as human beings there's so much to learn. And the first thing that is really important is to recognize that, you know, every person has limitations in terms of the knowledge they have started with, but God willing, once they go forward, God will enlighten them. But for that, one
Yeah,
has to be open to different views.
sure. Did you send that Arabic thing?
I
I'll
did
bring
on the
that up.
private chat. Yeah, I did on the private chat.
Oh, right. Right. Oh, right. You mean here in
Yes.
this discussion? Oh, right. Okay. Sorry, I was looking. Ah, right. Okay. So, oh, I see. Okay, let me just bring that up. Um, mhm, okay. Put that over there and try the sharing. Share screen. Okay, so this is the hadith of the qulub, most beloved of hearts to Allah, and um,
The Arabic text is
right.
below.
So okay, yeah, it's not appearing as large on my screen. Let me see if I can zoom that in. Yeah, that might be working actually. Um, Right. Okay. So you've got an Abi Inaba al Khawlani قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إن آنية من أهل الأرض وآنية ربكم قلوب عباده الصالحين وأحبها إليه ألينها وأرقها مسند الشاميين للطبراني. Okay. And Albani says إسناده قوي في سلسلة الصحيحة. Well, okay, sure. So I just get that for you guys there. That one of the vessels that you can see there, the English translation as well. Let's see if I can get that further. There you go. All right, shukran. I just wanted to get that for the viewers there. And then we'll this question, and we'll kind of bring this to an end. Somebody had said here, if I can find the question now, that right, somebody had asked about right, mysticism. I did respond to that. Oh, by the way, I see here the person tried to do a follow up. They assumed mysticism meant rahbaniya. That's just a lack of your understanding of Arabic. Rahbaniya is not mysticism. Rahbaniya is a kind of monastic asceticism. It's not mysticism, nothing to do with mysticism. Rahbaniya is nothing to do with mysticism. It's a kind of an extreme monasticism, or a kind of ascetic monasticism that the Christians had, that they were criticized for in the Quran. Right. Okay. The other question was, somebody had said, I'm trying to find it, but I'll sum it up. They had said that, look, if I can ask you, that their own faith is centrally built upon the concept of fear of God, as in they could not be a believer without the concept of hell for them. And they wanted me to ask you to, you know, that what you so to kind of to respond to that, that uh if for example hell didn't exist, they could not believe, that their iman rests on, I'm trying to find the exact wording, because when I'm saying this aloud it sounds silly now that I'm saying it, but when I read it, maybe I'm mischaracterizing it. But I think they wanted you to clarify, did you mean that hell does not exist? But you have already clarified, you didn't say that. And you didn't say that Ibn Araby meant that. And we did clarify that Ibn Araby was speaking about that he does affirm Jahannam, Naru Jahannam, the Adhab,
Yeah.
but he speaks of it being a kind of having a kind of sweetness and almost like a kind of a pleasure aspect to it for them as well, the tormentors. Now, yeah, but you didn't deny and he does speak of the finality of it. So this punishment, whatever it is, this torment doesn't last forever. And but that view is not just his view, it's a view of the Salaf, it's a view of also
Uh,
Ibn Taymiyyah and Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah, amongst other people. But yep, sorry, carry on. Yeah,
um, I
Sheikh.
do, yeah, I do want to mention this. Now, if a person, based on
Sorry,
the,
so
sorry, go
let me,
ahead.
I found
Yeah.
his question,
Oh, okay,
right?
good.
So, because I thought, Mufti Ibn, I'm sorry, but I can only accept faith on the basis that I may go to hell if I don't. Can you ask the guest if that means I'm not a true mu'min?
Astaghfirullah. First of all, it is Allah who decides who is a mu'min. Number one. Number two,
Exactly.
right? Number two, if that is how
Even I was
person.
going to be surprised if you started to answer that, Sheikh. I was going to be like, okay. Can you tell us if we're all, can we all come on one by one and you can tell us if we
Astaghfirullah. I mean, how a person believes, fine. Having said that, the shaykh in the path of love, they are seeking love of the divine. In fact, you have the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying this in a Tirmizi. You have that the Prophet alayhi salatu wasallam says that Hazrat Dawood alayhi salam, that is David, peace be upon him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, saying, "Oh Allah, I ask you for your love and the love of those who love you and the deeds that will bring me your love. Oh
yeah,
Allah, make
أسألك
your."
حبك وحب
Yes.
من يحبك.
So think about this. The word here, as'aluk, I ask you, hubbak, your love. That is at a higher stage. Everyone has their own personality. Some
Yeah,
people may just worship not for the fear of hellfire as much as for the sake of getting entry into paradise. But
yeah,
the shayuk of the highest level, what they're saying is that to experience that maqam na maqam, that insan al kamil, because al insan al kamil is the reflection of the divine names. The believer is the mirror of the believer. That is
yeah,
another. Now, it doesn't mean it's wrong. It's like, an analogy can be given. Anyone who gets a C grade or D grade is a pass. But we know someone who has a A grade, A plus has the highest grades. But everyone has passed, right? So it's like that.
mm,
How a person takes is their own choice.
yeah. So it is, look, just to
Mm.
clarify, there are many paths. As Imam Malik, when he was asked
Yeah.
about Sabilullah, the path that leads to God, the path of God, he said, Subulullah kathira.
Mm.
There are many paths that lead to God. Don't, or in the hadith, لَقَدْ ضَيَّقْتَ وَاسِعًا, something that was so vast, you try to restrict it, narrow it. That there's many, to some people, they may be drawn to God from his fear, some maybe by a sense of rules. Sometimes some people, you'll find that they convert to Islam or they convert to religion, and especially Islam in this day and age, because they are people who in their daily lives, some people, they have almost this OCD of rules, and they need rules in their day-to-day lives on that level. Like they are, nowadays the term is um, neurodivergent. So they have kind of like on the autism spectrum. Now, maybe some are more than others, but they need, like, if they have a shopping bag, they can't just throw things in. They'll completely derail if you throw things in a shopping. They have to organize it
And
in a bag, and yeah,
and Mufti Saab, the Quran clearly states, Surah 5, verse 48, we have assigned a law and a path to each of you. If God had
yeah,
so willed, He would have made you one community. But He
yeah.
wanted to test you through that which He has given you. So raise to do good.
Yeah, so
Everyone has, yeah.
that is beautiful. Yeah, so you will find
Yeah.
there will be, look, people that each to their own. You will find many paths, all leading to Allah. So there will be people who are, they for them that kind of scrupulous. This that they must be ruled to the letter T. Everything must be black and white. If it isn't, I collapse. To some people, it will just be fear. They're draped in fear, drowning in fear. Now, personally, I wouldn't. That's not the path I would call people to. But I recognize that that is a path that many people have. Is a well trodden path. It is not one that I personally would be inclined to or call people to, because I mean there will be a path after that. People for the love of paradise and reward, but there is a higher path, one of just divine love, of the divine himself, of Allah, this gratitude to just God for God. This not just this kind of that his rahma wasi'at kulla shay, as the verse of the Quran says. It encompasses everything. So now that's not to say there is no punishment. That's not to say there is no torment. That's not to say people won't get it tough. That's not to say there won't be a reward. But be they what they may, ultimately,
Yeah,
in comparison to everything, Allah is.
exactly.
And so his wujud is the ultimate. So, that's not to say these things are not there or these things are not, but to some people, their eyes are on that on Allah. And that's the goal. So that is a kind of higher way or a different mode of connecting with the divine. That's one that I would advocate. That's one that I am enamored by. And so
And
that's not to say that, look, to somebody, they might say, like somebody said today, this question, oh, if there's no concept of me being punished, then I wouldn't believe in God. I mean, I find that very strange, somewhat even masochistic, to be honest. But that said, sure, whatever floats your boat. And Allah, you are the creation of God, and Allah knows you better. He knows you better than I or anybody else could know you, or Shaykh could know you, or anybody. So, sure, if that's your bond with God, that's your bond with God. But generally speaking, I would say that we look to God not for kind of punishment, discipline, but we look to him through a lens of love, because he is looking to us like that. And I love that you said, you kind of added to my understanding, Sheikh, earlier on, when you said that, yuhibbuhum wa yuhibbuna, that he loves them,
and therefore,
then consequently,
yes,
you see, they love him. That we love God because he loves us. So that is rahma wasi'at kulla shay. That every single thing, it is draped in his mercy, whether we know it or not. I may not know this, I may not see it, but it is there. So shukran. Right, once again, it's been a beautiful conversation. I was thinking, actually, I'd said to Sheikh, you know what, an hour and a half of your time, it's gone to 2 hours, and we haven't even got through a fraction. I think we just got through a third, not even that, maybe, of what we wanted to talk about. So,
May
guys,
I may I may
yeah,
I add
go ahead.
just one point?
Of
And this is
course,
something, because if people are listening, please understand that it is the divine mercy that enables us to have a Sharia, the Islamic way, that is very flexible, that facilitates and that provides ease. It is not out of some mistake or error that we have ambiguity in our legal rulings. It is actually a mercy. And the Prophet himself used to teach different aspects. So the hadith regarding the time for Zohar and Asr, one day he showed a different time, the other day he showed a different time
yeah.
based on the length of the shadow. So if you want to follow Islam, you have to recognize this is the beauty of Islam. It allows you to, sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, and there is such
Yeah.
ambiguity is sometimes of inestimable value.
Yes.
We don't, and I know that's a quote from Freud, but it's actually true. Yeah, it is of inestimable value that we cannot under. And that hadith that you said of Hadith Jibril, that's
Mhm.
the other famous Hadith Jibril where the Salah is led.
Yeah.
Now, in that, if you read the Nas, it
Exactly.
says Fasalla. It says he prayed when the shadow was of this length, and the next day he prays when the shadow is of the other length.
Exactly.
And so Dhuhr and Asr are interesting because then it appears contradictory,
Right.
because he says Salah when it's two shadow, everything
One shot.
it's
Yeah.
twice, sorry, one shadow, and then but then
Two
it says
shin.
Asr, yeah,
Yes.
two shadows. Now the the point is, what does Salah here mean? Does Salah, as Abu Bakr ibn Araby, the other great Ibn Araby, highlights in his Ardatul Ahwadi, he says, well, Salah, that because it's a verb, the debate is, do you speak of its initiation or its completion? So if I said to you yesterday, I ate, uh, at 8 o'clock, does it mean I began to eat or I finished eating? Now, because ate is a past tense verb, meaning I ate. So so he says, when in this hadith it says Salla, does it mean bi awakhir al kalim or bi awailiha or awakhiriha? Does it mean intaha min intaha min salatihi or ibtada'a salatahu? So he says it can mean both. And this is the ambiguity, and this is why the Malikiya in the school of Medina, we have the waqtul mushtarak. We have the time of salah that is both dhuhr and both asr, and one of the only madhabs that has that as a consistent constant. So yeah, so just to say that, look, ambiguity is sometimes very
Exactly.
fascinating. Yeah,
Exactly. And
but
yeah. No, sorry, go
so
ahead.
shukran. No, I was going to say shukran, Sheikh. Somebody was asking about, and I didn't get it before, but I just realized now. Uh, they were asking, right, that thanks, Sayyid Imam, for that about a divine piano, and somebody else had asked that does Dr. Sayyid Hammad enjoy like playing the piano, and I thought, what a weird question comment. But then I just realized there's a piano in the background of that. What is a
Yeah.
that's just a I mean that's just a picture
A
backdrop,
picture,
isn't it? The
yeah.
whole
Yeah.
yeah,
I
yeah,
so wish I knew piano. That's my regret that I
yeah.
don't know musical instruments. And as there's rahma in the diversity of views, that's a rahma mercy. It is
Yeah.
permissible according to some shiuk to play
Of
piano
course,
instruments, right?
of
So,
course it is. And
but yeah,
one thing, and we'll just end on this.
yeah.
You see, Islam is about the expression, the practice. It's not about so for example, there could be a difference of opinion. Now you could disagree with it, but what you believe you should practice. So if a person says, look, I follow the view that music is haram, fine. The ulama have disagreed. Another ulama said music is not haram. Now, if somebody else follows the other view, now it's not about you imposing your view. It's about you following what you believe with devotion. So you should not be listening because you believe that's how you worship Allah. That's how you get closer to Allah. So you should practice what you preach and believe, not about imposing your opinion on another Muslim who disagrees, for example. Like you could tell a Muslim, oh, I think this is haram. They may say, okay, but I follow such and such mashayikh and ulama who say it's not haram. So fine, that's a disagreement. Now you focus on you, on your nafs, on your life, on your akhlaq. Yeah. So just as a final point there, right, with that, guys, we'll wrap this up. Allah bless you all. It's been a beautiful conversation. I've loved it. I hope you guys have benefited from this. And if anybody wants to reach out to Sheikh Sayyid Hammad, they can do so usually via, I think we've left it on the previous MindTrap. So I'm not sure what was it, an email or was it just
It was
saying?
it was an email, but I think I'm not using that email anymore.
Yeah, just give that one, the one you don't use.
But I do have another email. I can just put it in the private chat. So I'll just put it
Yeah,
here.
sure. And then I'll leave that in the
Mm,
people are more than welcome to reach
yeah.
out to
Did
Sheikh via
did you
that.
did you receive it?
So I've received I've received
Okay.
that. Should I just read it out? Do you want me to just read it
Oh no,
out
you can
or
you
leave
can
it?
read it out and post it as well. However, it is easier for you.
Sure. So it's just Dr. Sayyid, and then
Maybe you
uh,
might want to post it. It
yeah,
might
what
be
I'll do is I'll post it because the spelling will be slightly
no.
different. So, in any case, anybody who wants to reach out to me, you're more than welcome through Instagram. If you're interested in a one-to-one perspective session, if you head over to patreon.com/Melm and you can book through that. You can also join our Discord group where we do have group discussions at least twice monthly and amongst other things. Other than that, people, Allah bless your journey. And really, this is it. That's what this truly is. It is a journey on which, along the way, we're trying to discover Allah. But firstly, along the way, we discover ourselves even. And that becomes ironically one way of connecting closer to the Lord. Man arafa nafsa arafa rabba, whoever came to know himself or herself, came to know his or her Lord. Allah bless you all, and shukran lakum li husn istima'ikum, for you guys that were paying attention. And once again, Sheikh, Allah bless you for joining us today. I dearly appreciate. So, assalamu alaikum, and Allah bless you.
Walaikum assalam. Take care, everyone.